Thank you for joining us for another episode of Minded, a podcast on mental health where we are spiritually minded in our discussions, community minded in our mission, and like minded in the hope that we have in Christ. Thank you so much again for joining us for another episode, and we're excited because today is a follow-up to a previous episode that I did on forgiveness. And we laid a foundation for what biblical forgiveness looks like. And so today I thought we would talk a little bit more about what it means practically to actually walk out the steps in forgiveness or towards forgiveness and build a framework around that. And so today I have a special guest with me. And actually I brought family to the table today to hopefully have a casual, impactful, and laid back conversation, an honest conversation about forgiveness and how we can walk this thing out. So would you guys join me in welcoming Khrys, who is my first cousin. So Khrys, why don't you say hi to the people and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, people. My name is Khrys. I am Dee's cousin. I attend here at Emmanuel. I've been attending here for about 3 years now.
Okay.
And I love it. I love it. I love being here. I love worship here. I'm on the worship team here. So
I was about to say, don't be bashful. See you sing.
well,
To
you
tell
just
the
said
folks
it for
that.
me. Thank
Yep.
you for
You're
telling them
welcome.
for me.
And so the people are in for a treat today because, like I said, we're going to be talking openly, honestly, casually, and hopefully it's going to be impactful, but it's going to be casual because we're family, right?
Yep. You know,
And-
sometimes family isn't by choice, but yes, we are family.
So this is how this podcast is going to roll today. We are family, and it's not, we didn't have a choice in that. But guess what? We do have a choice in forgiveness. Yeah. So our last episode was with Carly Antizana, and we talked about forgiveness, some biblical foundations. We talked about the parable in Matthew 18, the parable of the debtor, and how his debt was forgiven, but yet he went on and demanded payment from someone else, and that person couldn't pay and had him put in jail. And then the king heard about it and basically was like, you wicked man, you know, you were forgiven much, and here you go out and demand something of someone else. And so that's basically our biblical foundation for forgiveness, is that God canceled a debt that we did owe. We couldn't pay it, but he canceled it, forgave us, and gave us eternal life through our acceptance of Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. And so I just felt that we needed to have an additional conversation on practically what is the framework for forgiveness? How do we walk it out? Hopefully some people that are listening, some might be believers, some might not be, some might be on the fence. And so I didn't really want to have this Christianese type of lingo. I'm like, oh, forgive and forget and let God and let go. And I think people are well-intentioned when they say those things, but some people might not be familiar with that and be like, what does it mean? And really, what does it mean? Like, well, what does that mean to let go and let God?
Right.
Do you feel the same way sometimes when
I do
people
feel
use that lingo and
The cliches.
cliches?
That we
Yeah,
use.
that's a good word. Good job. Good. Good job.
But yeah, the cliches, I think, sometimes get lost in translation.
Yeah.
Maybe from a good place, but you're right. Some of us need, and I say us because sometimes I don't want to hear those cliches. I
Right.
need something else. I need to talk to someone or hear something that is more sound, more humanized.
Exactly.
More, I got an emotion. What does this emotion mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully after today, people will have some takeaways that they can actually practically implement or begin to implement. And I always like to be clear from the beginning, like this is not a 10 steps, 12 steps, and then you do these things and everything is going to be okay. Because I think sometimes we want a formula. We want a handbook. We want a self-help book that after I read this book, do these steps, then voila, my life is going to be perfect. Everything is going to be great. And we're disillusioned because things don't happen the way we think they should happen based on these 10 or 12 steps. So this is not an exhaustive list of things that we'll talk about, but hopefully it will scratch the surface, get people thinking, And hopefully people will maybe even go back to their therapist with some newfound revelation or some newfound information that they can dive and delve in a little bit deeper in a professional setting with a professional.
Yep.
So one of the first things I like to start with is practically forgiveness is a choice. Would you agree or would you disagree?
Definitely.
And it's okay to disagree with me. Like,
Oh,
I'm giving
I
you
have-
permission
I have
publicly
no problem
in this
doing
space
that.
to disagree.
No problem doing that.
Because we're family.
Because we're family.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I disagree right now that you have me here doing this.
But you said yes. You
But I
committed
said
to
yes.
say yes. And I'm
And there's a purpose in that. We don't know what that purpose is yet, but Lord, thank you.
That's right. Amen. Amen for the growth. So the first thing that I like to put out there is, like I said, commit to making the choice to forgive. Because it's not always easy, because we want to hold on sometimes because we feel justified. If you wronged me and I'm like, well, no, you wronged me, I have a right to hold on to this. I have a right to feel how I want to feel. And you do have a right to feel. Your feelings are real. Your feelings are valid. Your feelings gauge the temperature of kind of where you are, mind, body, and soul. But your feelings should not dictate whether you forgive someone or not. Mm-hmm. It really is a conscious choice, a conscious effort, because for some people it might come more naturally than others. What do you think? Do you think forgiving comes naturally for you, or do you think it's something that you have to work more at?
Yeah, no, ma'am. I definitely have to work at forgiveness. And one of the things that I've learned in all of these years I've been on this earth,
And it's a few.
quite a few,
Yeah,
not as much as you though,
that's okay.
is that I have to give grace to myself.
Exactly.
I have to give grace to myself about choosing to forgive. Yeah, for those of us that have been brought up in the church, that's you've got to forgive, and that's it. But then sometimes we need to go deeper than that. And for me, that starts with the choice, giving myself grace and choosing to forgive. There is enough burden of the grief already that I'm experiencing because of this offense, because of this hurt, that I need to give myself the grace to feel that emotion, walk through that emotion before I even get to that choice. And that's real. Sometimes that is 10 minutes. Sometimes it could take 10 months.
Yeah.
Not saying that that's right, not saying that taking that long time to forgive someone is the right way, but in order for me to make sure that I've done it correctly and not backtrack, I need to give myself grace.
I like that. And a lot of times we don't give ourselves that grace, or we, again, hold on so tightly to the offense that we don't make the choice to forgive. Because for some, it can be a difficult decision, because sometimes they might believe that choosing to forgive is choosing to say, oh, well, you're going to get away with hurting me. And it doesn't mean that. And we talked a little bit about that last time, that forgiveness doesn't mean the person is absolved. The person that did the wrong does not mean that that person is absolved of the consequences.
Right.
There still may be, I can forgive you and still recognize that you have consequences that you have to go through, whether they're natural consequences, whether there are other types of consequences depending on the nature of the offense.
Right.
So it starts with that first step. And sometimes when you take that first step, again, give yourself that grace, acknowledge that, hey, I've got to choose to do it. It's got to be a conscious effort. I might not just wake up in the morning and be like, oh, I don't feel like forgiving, so I'm not. Or, oh, I feel like, because our feelings will have us all over the place.
Yes.
So we have to make that conscious choice to forgive. The other thing, and I think this is one of those cliches that we hear a lot in or out of the church, is forgive and forget. One of the things that, to me, is another practical step is stop trying to forget the incident. Stop trying to forget it, because it's like you're working against yourself. It's like that time I got stuck down in the mud, down in the country on, I think it was Thanksgiving, and I parked in the yard, but it had just rained the night before, and I wasn't thinking. And
Really? You
I
weren't
know,
thinking.
surprise.
My goodness.
I wasn't thinking. And I accelerated to try to go forward. And I wouldn't go, but I kept accelerating. And I kept accelerating. And I kept accelerating. And so finally another family member came out and was like, Dee, stop accelerating. Because all I was doing was splashing more mud, digging that hole deeper, and working up a sweat, and nothing was happening. And I think that's a similar analogy to when I'm just trying to forget this offense. I'm going to forgive, then I'm going to forget. But then it keeps popping in your mind. But I'm going to try harder and forget, and you're spinning your wheels, and I'm trying hard. It's like you're digging that hole.
All that energy.
All that
exhausting.
energy. And nothing, because you're not going to forget. I think a more realistic goal, and this maybe ties down to something I'll talk about a little bit later, instead of trying to forget it, even though it's a wrong, it's an offense, or a perceived wrong or a perceived offense, sometimes we have to figure out a way, how do I reconcile that this did happen to me? Maybe I didn't want it, didn't cause it, or maybe I had some accountability, but maybe not all. However, it's happened. You can't undo it.
Right.
So to try to expend this energy to try to forget is like spinning the wheels in mud. You're not going anywhere, but you're making a mess in the meantime, right?
Even hurting others in the meantime.
Exactly, because, and everyone was in their nice clothes and everything because it was Thanksgiving.
This had to be before all of us were born.
No, it
all
wasn't.
of us were born.
No, you were born. And
Was I?
Yeah, no, we were just down in the country, down in Quantico. I said, well, Haven was down in Quantico. But yeah, thankfully I didn't get mud on anyone because everyone, I guess, knew enough to stay out of the way. But there was mud up on my vehicle at the time and mud on the window. It was just a mess. So instead of expending that energy trying to forget it, it's like kind of my next point, acknowledge that this has happened. Yeah. Right? And acknowledging it doesn't mean that we're saying, oh, it's not that bad. No, we're just saying it happened. This sucks. And I hate using that word. My son used to get in trouble when he said it. It sucks. It's horrible. It's awful. But I'm acknowledging it. I'm not trying to forget it. One of the things that we hope to achieve is that you remember, unless you have some sort of degenerative type of disease for dementia or Alzheimer's, you're going to remember. But the goal is not to forget, but to remember and not relive it. Those are two different things. I can remember something without reliving it. When I remember and relive, that's when it's like that incident keeps happening over and over, and I'm spinning the wheels over and over again.
And sometimes it's like, what does that even look like? Remembering and reliving versus remembering and not reliving. And if we are honest, maybe you see that person, whoever offended you, you might see them in the grocery store. You're at a crossroad now. Do I harbor all those feelings? Do I regurgitate all the anger and, whatever emotion that you're feeling at the time? Or do I see them, maybe get a flash, but then continue on with, whatever I was doing without another thought of that? Because I feel like, can you forgive and still be hurt? I think you can forgive and still be hurt, but then choose to either stay in that hurt or move forward. And I wrote down, process and acknowledging the pain, letting go of the negative emotions and move towards healing and growth. That's always the goal. It's just getting there when you're at that crossroads, especially if it's someone that's close to you, someone that you're going to see, maybe a family member or a close friend or a coworker, someone that you're going to cross paths with regularly. What do you do at that crossroad?
Yeah. Is that a question that you're asking?
It's not a question.
Oh,
I think I just
okay.
answered my own question.
It's a rhetorical question?
Yeah.
Okay. But no, that's a good question, though.
Living
and
that out, people, what do we do with that?
And that's such a good question, because what you pointed out, that this path, this journey to forgiveness it's not a linear path. It's not a straight line from A to B to C. It's all over the place, and a detour and a backtrack and a misstep. And it's so important because all of it's part of the process. And the word grace again, giving ourselves the grace to unpack at each juncture that we're in at the cross. Okay, God, I'm here. I thought I was over this part, but then seeing this person or hearing something, it has brought it up again, and we'll get to that a little bit more, a little bit later also. And there's no perfect answer other than at each juncture praying and ask God for wisdom and direction, and then asking yourself, is my response to this juncture, is it going to move me closer to healing, or is it going to move me further away from healing? And sometimes we'll choose the correct path, and sometimes
We're going to fight.
we're going to
choosing
fight
the
it,
correct
and
path.
yeah, and sometimes I've chosen the wrong path. And I'm like, okay, God, I know I should do this, but you know what? I'm still in my feelings. I
Yep.
don't want to do that.
Absolutely.
And so I'm disobedient, and I go right when I should have gone left, or I go left when I should have gone right. And again, this process isn't perfection. This road to forgiveness isn't about perfection, but it's about making progress. It's about making growth. It's about healing. It's because it's a wound, whether it's an actual incident that happened or perceived, because sometimes our perceptions aren't always what they need to be, but it's a wound. And how we tend for the wound is going to either determine whether the wound festers and grows, gets infected, or slowly begins to develop that scab of healing. And every now and then, that scab will pick at
We'll
it.
pick at it, yeah.
Right. So that speaks to this being a process. And I know for me personally, I like things to be done right away. I like answers. I like to, if this doesn't make sense, how do we make it make sense? Right. How do we move from point A to point B? I don't like a whole lot of around the mulberry bush. I'm like, here, I've got a problem. How do we solve it? But this road to forgiveness isn't always like that. No. So we're going to stop spending all this extra energy on trying to forget, and we're going to say, I'm going to acknowledge it. And you kind of touched on this before. I'm going to admit the emotion and thoughts that I have. I'm hurt. I'm disappointed. I'm embarrassed. I'm angry. Whatever those things are. Or it could be negative thoughts that we have. I must not be that good of a friend. Or I must not be lovable. I'm not saying that those are accurate thoughts, but those are thoughts that admit that you have them. Because, again, spending that energy trying, I'm not mad. Yes, you are. I see it in your face, right? And the thing about family, sometimes we know each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can hide things from other people. And sometimes we can hide things from our family. But people that really know us, family and friends, they know when we're hiding something. And so, again, why go through all that hiding? Because I think when we hide things, the enemy sneaks in and tries to whisper or shout these things. See, I told you.
Playing in the mind.
Yeah.
Battle of the mind. I wrote that down too.
What? And I didn't know that. Are we on the same page in the wavelength? Oh my gosh. I have it taped. This is taped that we go on the same page.
Oh Lord.
Okay,
maybe we can
go
cut
ahead.
it out.
No, Battle of the Minds. Go
maybe
ahead.
Something will happen.
No. Battle of the Minds.
I mean, you're absolutely correct with the enemy creeping in.
Yeah.
I've experienced that myself with, no, I'm just going to be quiet about it. I don't want to burden anyone with my burden, or maybe I shouldn't open up about that. I don't want to feel judged, or, something along those lines. But the enemy will creep in.
Yeah.
And if you don't recognize it, it'll get worse. But I was thinking about that, and Joyce Meyer's the Battle of the Mind, her series, that came to mind, that if you don't keep that mind girded up and thinking on things that are good and positive, and it will trip you up. I am a living testimony. It will trip you up. It will.
And some people may say, well, what does that have to do with a step toward forgiveness? Because we cannot begin to change what we don't admit or acknowledge. Again, it's tied into that first step of making that choice. These are very fundamental things, seemingly simple things, but very powerful things. And I know a lot of times, I don't want to stereotype men or women, but I know a lot of times for women, we take on a lot of different roles and a lot of different responsibilities. Or if we're, single moms or some might be single dads,
Right.
they're taking things on, and it's just one more thing that comes and you feel like I got to deal with this myself. I have to handle this myself. And we keep things to ourselves. And so we want to admitting and acknowledging and asking for help even is so foundational to practically walking out the steps of forgiveness. The other thing I think is so important is it's kind of tied to admitting our human limitations.
Right.
Right? Like we were talking just last night about that documentary I had seen years ago called Live to Forgive. And the gentleman forgave his stepdad who killed his mom. And I was like, that's another
Whole nother level
that humanly possible. My mind can't even fathom that. And so we need God's grace. We need the power of the Holy Spirit living inside of us, walking with us, living in us, that will enable us to give that grace, to give that love, to give that unconditional love, and to give that forgiveness. There are just many things that are beyond our human limitations, because humanly, we in our flesh, we want to hold on, especially something like that. Like you killed my family member. Like there
My
is
mom
no
had that, yeah.
Yeah, that to me, that's like, hey, that right and wrong, right? That's not a gray area. That's not So to me, I'm like, I would feel justified in holding on to my anger. But I told you in that story, he had a sibling that, as of when the documentary was made, I don't know where she's at now, that could not forgive. And she had a totally different life that, like, he had some hiccups along the way, but he was able to get through them. He found the Lord and then began sharing his testimony. And she had another path. She could not bring herself to forgive. And so one of the things that we talked about last episode is that harboring unforgiveness also has physical side effects on our body, like increased anxiety, increased depression, chronic anger, our bodies staying in that fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And I had said Johns Hopkins, again, a secular organization, had done this study on the benefits of forgiveness. So again, it lines right perfectly up with the Bible, and that we're not supposed to hold on to these things because it really makes us a slave to the offense, a slave to the person that hurt us, a slave to our own emotions, a slave to our own negative thinking. And so we have to admit and acknowledge, God, I can't do this by myself.
Right.
I can't do it in my own strength. Another practical step in considering as we walk to forgiveness is we have to stop rehearsing and reliving the incident, because I strongly believe we become proficient at what we rehearse. I remember when my son played Salvation Army football, and the coaches would be like, practice makes perfect. But sometimes they would say, right practice makes perfect, right? And so I'm not a sports fan. So I kind of got that analogy. I got it. But our family, is more of singing, some more than others.
You're not a singing fan either.
I am a singing fan. I just don't know all the latest names of people and stuff. But I know what I like.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay.
I know what I like.
Well, you need to like singing.
And so, but I know what happens when someone learns and rehearses a song in the wrong key. They're going to sing it, but they're going to sing it in the wrong key. Like, not that you've ever done that. I don't think, have you?
Probably.
You think so?
I probably have, yeah.
But like you can spend all
When I used
weekend,
to play a saxophone, I used to play in the wrong key.
Yeah, so you could practice, right? But you're rehearsing it the wrong way. And I think it's a similar thing for when we're wronged. We rehearse it. And us ladies, again, I can't speak about a man because I'm not a man. But us ladies, we'll remember, if you offended me, for example, I can remember what you were wearing the day you offended me, where you were standing when you said it, what the weather was, what was on TV, the Price is Right was on, and then when you said this, because I remember they were spinning the wheel,
Yep,
and
they
then
got a 90, and
we will run it down to the very wire. We will rehearse it, and so then when I'm hurt, and I'm talking to my friend about this hurt, and I'm like, can you believe, Chris? She did this. And then when I said this, she said that. And then I put my hand on my hip, and then she told me, girl, what are you putting your hand on your hip for? I'm not scared. And no,
like something I definitely would say.
I know. Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
How did I know that?
I don't know.
I know.
I never did that to you.
No, you never did that to me.
Not yet.
You won't do that. So, you almost made me lose my train of thought.
I got you.
Rehearsing. So when I'm rehearsing you hurting me with another friend, that's fueling the unforgiveness. Now, I think it's part of the venting is part of the process. I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with venting. But every time I see my friend, I'm rehearsing the hurt that you inflicted on me. I talk to my friend, say maybe 5 times in a day. 5 times in a day, I'm bringing up your name. Your name is in my mouth. I'm talking about what Chris did and what she should have done and what I'm going to do to her. I'm not in a mindset or posture of forgiving you because I'm still rehearsing and reliving it.
Yep.
And so someone may say, well, what does that mean? How do you change that? Because I'm not about just saying, stop this, stop this. Yeah, we want to cease or minimize things, but we want to replace it with something. So if I'm supposed to not rehearse this in the wrong way, what am I supposed to do with it, right? Because it happened. And one of the things I think is we have to begin to kind of rescript this narrative, not try to act like it didn't happen, but instead of saying, you know what, Chris makes me sick, she gets on my nerves. You know what? This is an example.
I know I don't make you sick.
But
you love me.
I do love you. I do love you. But it's like saying, you know what, I don't understand why Chris would say what she said. I was hurt by that. So again, we're going back to acknowledging. It made me feel like she didn't trust me as a friend, or she trusted someone else that she had only known for a week, and we've been friends for a year. So now I'm getting at the root of what's wrong. My feelings hurt. Again, that's acknowledging the thoughts. I feel like betrayed or let down. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're not just rehearsing the details of what happened because we can't change the details, but we can begin to sort through and change the meaning that we attach to the details in the incident. Like, I feel betrayed. I think that she, mishandled me. And again, we don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's a little bit better, a lot better than me just rehearsing the details of A, B, C, D, all the way to Z, right? Because we can't change the details.
Yeah.
And so then we can begin to, again, go to God and say, okay, God, I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling betrayed. Give me some direction on what to say, whether I should have a conversation with Chris, or should I write her a letter, or should I send her a text, or, now we're making some movement in a right direction. So a lot of times we start rehearsing these negative details, but we expect a different outcome, and we're not going to get a different outcome until we begin acknowledging the hurts and the whatever the thoughts are, whatever the emotions are, and then beginning to reframe some of those and be like, okay, how can I begin to get at the root of what's going on? How can maybe our friendship, can it be salvaged? Can we talk about it? Can we work through it? Right? Or maybe I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna work through it. And then I say, Chris, can we talk about it? You're like, nope, I'm not trying to talk. But I think I really wanna, nope, I'm not. And that's okay. Because forgiveness isn't for you, so to say, but it's for me to release so you don't have to buy into me wanting us to, to talk about this whole forgiveness thing. You don't have to buy in to, me forgiving you. You don't have to buy into that. And so I don't have to wait for you to be on board to have a conversation with me before I can say, oh, I can only forgive Chris when we sit down and talk about it. Because what if you never decide to sit down and talk about it? right?
Right.
Or what if there are people that maybe the person that they're holding on unforgiveness to is deceased and not here? So what does that mean for that person? And you can still, again, walk these steps, or not steps, but this framework for delving into the unforgiveness and working on extending forgiveness, even to someone that is in the grave and is not here anymore. Because the forgiveness is about freeing us.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Oh, I totally agree. Going back to what you said about if you are constantly talking about the details, the people, and going to another part of that would be when you're going to these other people. Now they're going to start harboring. If they are team you and you know really don't want to see something happen that is positive, if they're just team you and they don't want to know the other side, then you're going to start infiltrating those negative thoughts into them. And so when they see that person, they're going to be like feeling some kind of way. How do I know? It's happened to me.
Yeah.
It's happened to me. Having someone tell me something that someone did to them, and me not wanting to react, me not wanting to respond, that's hard because I want to take up for or protect, you know, the ones that I love. And there comes a point where you have to realize you can't do that. You can't always do that. Sometimes you have to let that person walk out what they need to walk out for forgiveness, but you can't add to that. You can't add animosity to that. And that is something that I had to learn, that I had to walk out, that just recently happened. Like, you just have to let that go because why?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Because if they didn't do anything to you directly, that's just exhausted energy. And I'm all about not exhausting energy.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. I'm too old.
And again, you got to make that conscious choice to do that, right? And kind of similar to what you're saying, and I think we're on the same page again, is that sometimes as we're walking through this and we're trying to create a different narrative or examine those negative thoughts or those self-defeating thoughts and working to change them, we have to make sure we don't allow people to lure us back into old self-defeating narratives. Again, whether they're well-meaning friends, like I'm trying to work through forgiving you, and they come around like, hey, did you see Chris today? You see what she had on? That outfit, she thought she looked cute. And she, like, that has nothing to do with anything, but yet, again, is fueling that. And so I have to learn how to put that friend lovingly, like, you know what? We're not going there today. I'm working through some things. I'm praying about some things. And so that's going to give me an indication that I can't go to her and process certain things with her because maybe, again, she's Team D. And she's, whatever I say, she's going to get defensive and protective of me. So I'm not going to go to her because I don't want to get lured into the old narrative that I'm trying to sort through in my head.
You know what? Thank you, Lord. See, I did not say in the beginning, there's a purpose for this.
Yeah.
So you just even saying that brought back to my mind something that I am currently going through. Now, earlier in the set, I said that I attend here, and I sing on the worship team. We are not exempt from anything.
Exactly.
We are not perfect people. We all go through. And so this is just me being transparent. When you just said that, there is literally something, and I guess I never really looked at it that way, but there is literally something that at work I'm going through. Same situation. And so now, us even talking this out, I can kind of use this framework to get through that situation because I do find myself, because of the offense, I feel like I'm talking about it, but I didn't look at it this way because, it's a coworker, so we're going through this together.
Right.
But no, we have to be lights.
Yeah.
We have to be lights. So thank you.
You're
that
welcome.
There is a purpose in me being here.
Yeah.
And I just got something out of this that I need to take back now to my coworker so that we can work through this and get through this. And perhaps wherever you're planted, ask the Lord for your purpose there.
Okay.
Wherever you're planted, not just you, but I'm saying this the viewers, wherever you're planted. And now that I'm thinking about this at work, because I have a lot of trouble at work. and I never understood why. But the Lord's speaking to me right now, and I am not. I don't do that.
No, you don't do this. So that's why my ears are perked and like
But
listening.
wherever you're planted, ask Him why, and whatever my mission is here, help me fulfill it, Lord. There's a reason why I was planted where I'm planted, a reason why I'm going through what I'm going through at work. But you just gave me a different outlook on that. Like, I know that this is, because I'm now getting hot. So whatever it is, wherever you're planted, whatever you're going through, ask God to see you through it.
Yeah.
And just help Him to show the purpose in it.
Yeah, kind of like asking God to give you the eyes to see people differently, to see people how He sees people. Again, not that people are perfect. We're not perfect.
We're not perfect.
But we're all created in His image. And we're light bearers. We're image bearers of Christ, even to those that believe, who don't believe. And that's part of like creating a different narrative. Again, it's not minimizing the wrong things that might be happening, but it gives it a different perspective, a godly perspective, a kingdom-minded perspective.
Yes.
And it's so easy because we're in this flesh, and the spirit and the flesh are constantly what? At war with one another. Yeah. And we have to crucify that flesh daily. And sometimes it wins out in the moment or in the day. But we have to continually go back and say, God, give me your eyes, give me your ears, help me to love like you love, even when it's difficult people or a difficult situation. Give me the wisdom. And that's about creating that kingdom-minded perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, I love it. I love it. Kind of what we also said, canceling the debt. What does that mean, canceling the debt? Well, if you owe me $50, and you don't, but if you owed me $50 and I said, well, you know what, Chris, I know you owe me $50, but you haven't paid it. I won't say that to you, but I'm just saying, and you haven't paid it. It looks like you're not going to pay it. Forgiving you would be, you know what? That $50 is just gone. I've released you from that debt. I've released you from the expectation of paying that debt. That's what forgiveness is. So that's what God through Christ did for us. We owed a debt, a sin debt that we could not pay. But He canceled the debt through hanging on the cross, dying on the cross, being resurrected, and sitting at the right hand of God the Father, who now He intercedes on our behalf. So He canceled our debt. Even before I came to Him, the debt was already paid. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And so us as believers walking this out, our forgiveness is saying, you know what? This person or person owes me something, and maybe they're not even in a place to acknowledge the wrongdoing or whatever, but I'm going to release them from the expectation of getting the debt repaid. So it might mean, I think, Chris, I deserve an I'm sorry because you did something and it wasn't right, but you might not ever say I'm sorry. So me forgiving you is releasing you from that expectation of I'm sorry and said, you know what, I forgive her. Yes, maybe I needed an I'm sorry because what she did was wrong. I'm not going to get it, but I'm not going to be bound by it because you could be going on with your life and care less whether you say I'm sorry or not. And I'm over here 5 years later still stewing over something that now you don't even remember what you did to me, but I'm stuck in the emotion. And so we have to release people from that debt. Now, again, going back to what we said earlier, doesn't mean that a person is exempt from maybe consequences that might happen, right? So, again, when we were talking about the 10-year anniversary of that shooting in that church in Charleston, South Carolina, the news story came on again. I think it was this morning or again late last night, and it was some type of hearing that this guy now 10 years later, and it was a closed circuit, like he wasn't there physically in person, but the victim, the survivors of the family members who were killed. I think it was 9 church members that were killed. One of the ladies that got away, and then some of the other like family members of the deceased came to this hearing. And they said every one of them, the judge allowed them to say something to this person. Again, he was in a closed circuit TV. And they each said, either something to the effect of, I forgive you, God, may God have mercy on you. And the one lady that survived, her son was killed on one side of her, and I think her mom on the other side of her. And again, it's just something like I can't wrap my mind around it. One of the pastors there, his wife was leading the Bible study that they invited this man in for prayer, and so his wife was killed. And again, he's there talking about he forgives this guy, and what he called it was a divine intervention. I'm like, yeah, buddy, divine, because in our flesh we can't muster up that and be sincere, because this is not about a flippant, oh yeah, I forgive you. Like, I would think something that we walk through, that I have some good days, some bad days, some days where maybe I struggle more than others, to muster up that I forgive you. But each one of those people that they showed on that news story seemed, I believe, they were very sincere. Like, where do you get that? It's from, like you said, divine, from the power of the Holy Spirit.
Only the power of the Holy Spirit.
And something that stuck with me, the woman said, even though she forgives him, this was the one whose family members died on either side of her. She said she forgives him, but he still needs to deal with the consequences of what he did.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a perfect example of not being bound by unforgiveness, forgiving and recognizing that this, just because I forgive you doesn't mean that you should be absolved from the consequences of taking a life. So you have to be held accountable to the law, which he is.
And not even that, but sometimes when we are walking through this forgiveness process, I think, with them, yes, they found, a divine intervention and they're able to, but something like that, the majority of us probably wishing something needs to happen to him. Someone needs to kill him. He needs to die. Sometimes those thoughts come, and maybe not even in that situation, but maybe something else like, a molestation,
Right.
or, something that the offense has just been horrific, or world changing, just you want bodily harm coming to that person. And that is a real emotion.
Yeah, it is.
And having to deal and overcome, those type of emotions, it's something different if you...
There's stubborn. I mean, it's something so
minute, but
Right.
then when you have those emotions of physical body harm to this person because they have offended you, I think that's a different level of I need to forgive. And then those thoughts, it goes back to the battle of the mind. What thoughts are you having
Right.
now, walking through this process of forgiving that person?
And that's why I think this is not, forgiveness is not for the faint of heart. This is not some Christianese statement like, oh, forgive as God forgives. Yes, we are to do that, and to walk it. So for you, me forgiving you because you stole my wallet, right? Okay. Me forgiving you because you killed a family member. Again, both are offenses, but the magnitude of the offense, but yet our forgiveness is not based on the magnitude of the offense. We're supposed to give freely because forgiveness was freely given to us. And again, I'm not trying to make this all pansies and rainbows and unicorns, because I can only imagine what those people and other people that have gone through horrific challenges, but yet have found a way to forgive, walk that path of forgiveness, is not for the faint of heart.
Right. No.
Not for the faint of heart. So part of this framework of forgiveness is we have to release this expectation. Again, a lot of times we hold on to this expectation of, well, they deserve this, they deserve that, or they need to give me this, or they need to make it right by doing X, Y, or Z. And maybe that is true, but we can't control it,
Right.
and I know I like control. We have to release it, because holding on to the expectation of payment creates bondage to the woulda, coulda, shoulda. Well, you should have, you could have, why didn't you? And it holds us being in bondage and stuck in the moment around that incident.
Right.
So the incident happened, again, could maybe, again, very valid, but then 15 years, 5 years, 3 years, I'm still stuck in that same expecting someone to come to me and make it right, expecting And it ain't
Yeah,
happening. It's not happening. And it's a process. I think we had said that before, that this is not a one and done. I wake up, oh yeah, I'll forgive you. Like maybe there are things that happen that it's that quick, but other times it's going to be things that we struggle with because these valid emotions, we experience them, whether it's I want revenge or I want this person to hurt like I hurt or I want this person to pay like those things, like we've been saying and reiterating that that's real. So it's a process. And we have to be honest and say it's difficult.
Yeah.
Right. Even as believers, we need to stop painting this picture that it's all, I say a 2-minute prayer and everything is okay. Like, I mean, maybe I'm praying wrong then, but it doesn't happen that way for me. Like some things I have to constantly like, God, here I am again.
Yeah.
I'm struggling. I cast it at your feet. So we've got to be willing to have these honest conversations with ourselves and with God because he knows. But opening up this conversation to him where we're struggling with forgiveness, it allows us, one, to be vulnerable and humble, and it shows us that our dependence is on him.
And that's what he wants. He wants us to, he knows, but he wants to hear it from us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yet a lot of times we're too busy having these honest and conversations on social media where it's causing more division, fueling the unforgiveness, fueling Team D versus Team Chris, and I'm weighing in, my friends are weighing in, then your friends are weighing in, and then before you know it, you're having this like battle
It's an online
behind
battle,
the keyboard,
behind the screen.
right?
Yeah.
Behind the keyboard and the screen,
And nothing's getting settled.
and nothing's getting settled, and nothing's changing. People aren't changing. Forgiveness is like because I'm right, right? I'm right. Well, and I think we had mentioned this when Carly was on. Like, do we want to be right or do we want to be healed?
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to say, you know what? It's not about being right, but I want healing. I want healing for you too, but I can't control whether you take that healing. But I have to make sure my actions line up and are consistent with me getting the healing that I need, that God wants for me, that as an image bearer, I need to exemplify, right? And so, but yeah, that we could do a whole podcast on holding these conversations on social media. That's that's one of my pet peeves.
But another thing, when you talk about that, if you flip it and this, just looking at it at another angle, these offenders are people that carry trauma. I feel like it's a lot of times people that carry trauma and they're unhealed, and the only thing they know how to do is offend. The only thing they know how to do is hurt. And so when that's happening, the wounds that they have sometimes are shaping who they become.
Yeah.
And then all these things happen, and I don't know, it just causes people to fumble you, causes people to hurt you, harm you, or whatever the case may be. So it's like, how do you give grace? Because even in a store, you never know what someone's going through.
That's true.
A cashier could just look like a cashier to you, but be going through some crazy stuff. And if they aren't ringing your stuff up fast enough, you got an attitude. You want to just, it's giving grace. It goes back to grace. Everyone's dealing with something.
And I think it also goes back to the grace and seeing people with different eyes.
For different eyes.
Even with the forgiveness, like, you know what, they're flawed as well. Again, not absolving them of whatever wrong that may have happened, but recognizing, you know what, God, maybe they're going through something. And this is kind of one of those steps that I know I struggled with forgiveness, was praying for that person. Because it's hard to stay in a state of unforgiveness and anger and truly pray for someone. And in the beginning, though, when I was, praying for, when I was hurt due to the divorce, and my prayers, I think at first were through like gritted teeth. I've shared this before. I was praying, but it was like, God, help this person, or God, help me. I was praying, but it didn't feel genuine, but I stayed the course, right? This is about being honest and vulnerable. I stayed the course, and I'm like, this is what not only what I was, initially it was, this is what I'm supposed to do. And that became this is what I want to do. And so when I went from this is what I'm supposed to do, this is what I want to do, it felt very different. So now we're praying for a person's well-being. You're praying for a person who is flawed as well. You're praying for restoration for that person. You're praying blessings for that person. But again, it might start out, again, we're being honest, it might start out where it doesn't feel real and you're like, God, but what I really want to have happen, kind of feel like David, and David is in the beginning of his Psalms, like, God, why are you letting these people get away with hurting me? Slay them all, And then toward the end, he's like, well, God, you're the God you're faithful and you're just. But so God can handle all range of our emotions.
Right.
He just wants us to lay it at his feet and pray. Like, so if you're praying for the person that you're trying to forgive and it doesn't seem genuine and real, keep praying. Keep praying through gritted teeth. Keep praying. Keep praying. Don't ever stop. Keep praying. Because what prayer does, it doesn't really change that person. It changes us. And it changes our heart. And it changes our perspective.
Another step in the process.
Another step in the process.
Yeah, but so what if you're still walking through that unforgiveness and you're just praying? Like, are your prayers being heard even though you're still walking through that forgiveness?
I think so. I think because God, as believers, God hears our prayers. And he tells us to cast all of our cares on him because he cares. And so I believe that when we pray honest prayers, God, I'm struggling. Like, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I remember one time you had to talk me off on a ledge where I was at the store and someone had lied on me.
Yeah.
You remember this person?
Yes.
And no, it was not my ex-husband. So everyone was like, oh no, it was another person
Right.
had lied on me. And I was I was ready to fight. And I had to call you to talk me off the ledge. And I had to eventually pray for this person. And I'm like, God, I don't want to, that person lied on me. I want to go.
See, and we just talked about, when you're venting to or talking about the situation to someone else, they always want to ride or die.
Right.
So yeah, I want to be on your side. But then that wasn't my assignment.
Right.
My assignment wasn't to back you for what you wanted to do because I knew that was wrong. My assignment, true assignment, was to do the complete opposite, which is to talk you down.
Talk me down.
Not to encourage you.
Right.
Even though you're my ride or die, like you're my ace, so I want to.
I know that was hard, but you did.
That's
You talked
hard.
me. You talked me down, and I had to eventually forgive this person. But eventually, at first, it was like, I don't want to. This person lied on me. Like, they could have got me into some serious trouble with my job, and I wanted to go beat this person up, like for real, beat them up. And I'm like, but I can't do that.
Listen, if y'all don't know, you don't want. I'm telling you, you don't
That's
want
another podcast.
You don't want no smoke from Dee.
That's another podcast.
I'm just letting
saved.
people
I'm
know.
saved. I'm real
Yes,
saved.
you are.
I was
We thank God
I was
for
kind
that.
of saved, and I was kind of straddling the fence a little bit. But again, I
be
knew
them straddlers. You don't want no smoke. I'm telling you.
But I knew what I needed to do, and this is to say, again, it's not always easy and it doesn't always look pretty. And it's important to surround yourself with people that are going to be that voice of reason or be that calm or be that, no, we don't need to do that. And then in the prayer, and getting back to the prayer, that's what we were talking about, the prayers. My prayers, again, with that, felt like I didn't feel real. And anyone that knows me is like, I'm not a fake person. If I can't be real in it, then I don't want no parts of it. And so it felt very foreign or felt very contrived. It didn't feel real. But again, don't give up. God knows our heart, and that's what he wants, because the more we stay at his feet, the more humbled we get. The more honest we're with him, the more humbled we get. The more we pray his will. Like, God, I want this brick to fall out from the sky and, hit this person on the head. But that's contrary to your word. Mm-hmm. So I can't pray that because I know that that's not what he wants. So I think that when we pray honest prayers to him, that he hears. He hears us. Now, he's not going to do, obviously, something that's against his
Exactly.
will, but he hears us.
But, us saying it, we can get it out. And
and get it out to the right person. Again, I have some friends now that if I were to tell them that story, I wouldn't have told them that person this. I'm thinking of a particular person. And I would not have told her what had happened because she would have just been like, I'll take one for Dee. I would not have told her.
Yeah.
So again, we have to be wise when we are processing and working through things, who we share things with. And sometimes you might have that ride or die in your corner, or you might not, but you always have God.
Yeah.
And you always have God. Now, flip side of this is asking for forgiveness. We've been talking a little bit mainly about, I've been wronged. I need to forgive you because you wronged me. But what if I'm the one who did the wrong? And what does it look like? So people might be listening, maybe you weren't the victim of the incident, but maybe you were the offender or the perpetrator of the incident, and you want to make it right, and you want to ask forgiveness. And I think this framework still applies. You need to acknowledge the wrong.
Yeah.
Acknowledge in humility and vulnerability whatever it was that was done. Now, again, I think it's very similar. I can't control if I'm trying to say, well, Chris, can you forgive me? I should not have talked to you that way. I used a really negative tone that was not of God. Will you forgive me? And you might be in a day where you not feeling it. You're like, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to hear that.
You're not trying to hear that. So what does that mean for me? Well, again, for me, I'm doing all God has given me to do.
Right.
I'm working my best to be at peace with everyone. I can't control that you don't reciprocate that or you open that door, but I'm doing my part by coming to you and asking, right? And I think a lot of times we focus on the other side.
Right.
And sometimes we have to arrange, again, not Facebook time, but sometimes we might have to arrange for, well, Chris, can we talk, right? Because it's not for me to say on Facebook, Chris, I'm sorry that I did X, Y, and Z on Facebook for.
I think that's just for attention.
Yeah, so
it
you're
has
not
to be
really
genuine.
you're not really working at reconciliation. You're not really working at forgiveness, and so I think we're sometimes losing the art of having intimate conversations with people. One-on-one conversations or even on the phone conversations. But some things don't need to be a text. Some things don't need to be an email. Some things don't need to be a post. Some things need to be a one-on-one. So you can look me in my eye, I can look you in your eye, and we can be vulnerable to each other.
And that shows growth.
Yeah. Now, again, there might be some situations where that can't happen. Like in the case where there has been trauma and you don't feel safe being with this person, or it's not safe to be with the person. Again, God will give you wisdom or with a therapist to help you to sort out, how can I walk this through? And I think we talked about this briefly, forgiving ourselves. And sometimes that seems harder. Like I can work on forgiving you, but I hold myself to a different standard.
And I think maybe sometimes people don't even understand what that means. Like, forgive myself. What do you mean? Forgive myself. What does that mean?
What does that mean to you when you hear
well,
that?
if I'm the offender or if I'm not the offender.
Either way, however you want to work it.
Well, I think if I'm the offender, forgiving myself would mean that I'd have to walk in humility. I'd have to step out of flesh and really look at myself to see how I played a part in, offending someone, and then grace. Like it goes back to grace. I think that's my word for the year is grace.
Because you've used that quite a bit,
Yeah,
but it's fitting. It's fitting.
Because I think that's otherwise you're just going to constantly beat yourself up. And I think constantly beating yourself up and feeling negative or it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, keeps
But
you stuck.
Giving yourself grace, giving yourself room to grow, make mistakes, but then recognize that and then recourse.
I think sometimes, because I put down here recognizing and forgiving ourselves, that this too is a choice, and recognizing God's grace and forgiveness not only extends to other people, it extends to us. And I'm wondering if sometimes people have a hard time forgiving themselves because they're trying to punish themselves. I remember I've had clients in the past that they did whatever XYZ wrong it was, but in order for them to kind of remember it, they never let themselves off the hook because they wanted it to be a reminder, almost like a form of punishment, that they did something wrong. And I always want to remember that I was a bad person and I did this, and I don't ever want to forget that I was that bad person. So it's like, and again, that's not everyone's case.
Yeah.
But in that situation, I never thought about it like that, but they were punishing themselves. And so them not forgiving themselves, part of the punishment was so that they'll always remember. So it was like keeping them stuck into this cycle of guilt and shame, and that they're, not worthy or not worthy of grace or forgiveness. And the whole thing is, we all deserve death. According to, the wages of sin is death. It's by God's grace that He's extended His kindness and His faithfulness and His mercies that are new every morning. Like, we can't do enough deeds to earn that. We can't. And so I think people that try to do that keep themselves in this cycle of trying to just constantly make penance, strive to do this, strive to do that, striving for the brass ring, and then you get here, then it's somewhere else. You get there, then it's somewhere else. And God is not about the striving.
All that chasing.
And all the chasing. He just wants us to be still and say, you know what? Here's this gift of salvation. You didn't earn it. You can't earn it. It's a free gift. Just receive it. And maybe for some people that seems easy. It's easy, but yet there's a cost to serving God. And I think that's a whole other thing where salvation is free, but there's a cost with serving that comes with serving. We're dying to ourselves. We're picking up our cross and dying. That's why I said all this forgiveness and all that, it's work.
It is work.
It's a commitment to
just
God.
like walking, though, the Christian life or the Christian walk, that takes work. It's not easy. There's processes through that, and we're not perfect.
Yeah.
We're not gonna be perfect. We just have to strive to do what we can and do good every day and follow, God's character, His leading every single day, dying to our flesh every single day. And it's the same with forgiveness. It's a process. It's a walk. As long as you can do a little bit each day, like growing, seeing yourself grow each day, like it can happen.
It can
happen.
And so I think if I were to want to leave any final words with people, is that as they can see or hear from our talking, there is no 12-step, 10-step. It really is just some key points, frameworks, some biblical principles, some things that hopefully will have them thinking about, some things that they can address further with their therapist if they're struggling with, and if if they're struggling with unforgiveness, I want to validate that and say that's okay. That's okay, because this is not about being perfect. It's admitting where you're struggling and then reaching out to get help, to help you to sort through wherever the struggle is, and to know that the freedom is going to be so much worth it.
Yeah,
the freedom when we say, I forgive you, when those chains fall off, when those emotional baggages fall off, and you feel just this, I don't know what the word is, this lightening of the load. Because once you lighten the load, you're like, man, I didn't realize the load was heavy until you start shedding some of this stuff. Because carrying unforgiveness is a heavy load.
Yeah.
And we already talked about what that looks like, physically, mentally, what that looks like. And God doesn't want us to live like that because, again, we as believers, we are ambassadors. And we are living our life and practicing the way. I'm reading the book Practicing the Way by Comer, and it talks about being a disciple of Christ, meaning that we do things the way that Christ did. And he forgave, he freely forgave. And that's what we're supposed to do. And for those that are struggling, I want them to know that it's okay. They can get help, and it's a process, and it's going to be worth it.
For me, like we said, forgiveness is a choice. It's a conscious choice. It's not a release of responsibility. It's not a
Right.
release of the consequences. And it's taking your power back. Because if you continue to hold on to that, even though it feels right, it feels like it's the right thing to do, it feels validated, you don't have any power there.
Yeah.
The other person has the power.
Yeah.
And there's when we were talking about the battle of the mind, Isaiah 55, when God talks about my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways not your ways. So keeping that in the back of your mind, and we're going to get tempted. The scriptures say we're going to get tempted.
Exactly.
Temptation comes in different ways, and sometimes that can show up in unforgiveness, choosing not to forgive. But 1 Corinthians 10:13, not if but when, because it's going to come.
It's going to come.
When you're tempted, he'll show you a way out so that you can endure. You can endure, you can prevail, you'll succeed, you'll win, no matter what, because he's our Jehovah Nissi, our source of victory.
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
is.
And in the end, the more we submit to the process and submit to God's way, we're being shaped and formed more and more
Yep.
in his likeness. And that's what we want, right? It's really all for his glory.
Yep.
It's all for his glory. And so I want to thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that you joined us talking about kind of a part 2 on forgiveness and what it means to practically walk this out. And thank you for joining us on my family talk, having my cousin here with me. But again, if you need to talk to someone professionally, the links for, I think it's 988 that's going to be in the chat box, and some other resources. You don't have to suffer alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. And forgiveness is possible when you give it all to God. And your mental health is going to be better for it, your spiritual health, your physical health. You as a whole person is going to be better for it as you walk this road to forgiveness. Thank you.